Hi everybody. Um, I hope you still have energy to listen to me. Good. So today I'm gonna be talking about our future leaders, the identity of our future leaders, our future people, children. Thank you for this opportunity to the organizers. My name is Sthembile Ntshangase. I am a software engineer at CSIR. Um, okay, under the Information and Cybersecurity Center. I focus on everything that has to do with securing identity systems. So my daily work involves doing research, software development, also looking at the governance side of the systems that we do in identity, related to identity. That is why today I'm going to talk about um, issues that we have in identity for children, and also what can we do or what are we doing as CSR to solve those issues. Um, I'm sure everyone know what identity verification means, but I'm going to talk about it. But maybe a few of us know about the history of identity verification because it started long time ago. Probably we don't know what was happening and why children is always like there's nothing much done on children, but we'll talk about it. And then I can start child identity fraud. Maybe some of you have heard, maybe some of you have experienced it, but identity fraud is when someone uses either personal identifiable information for a child or identity number for a child to perform some fraud, some criminal activities, for example, or just doing anything without getting a permission from a child. I know it's complicated. Or getting a permission from someone who's responsible for a child, like a parent or guardian. So this is a big issue because some criminals, they take identities for children and apply for loans, open for bank accounts, buy cars, do different information, sometimes receive government services. I'm going to be talking about everything that is happening in our country, and sometimes receive services, receive money on behalf of a child without getting their consent. According to the South African Fraud Prevention Service, the rate at which identity fraud is increasing, it's very high compared to the reports that were presented in 2003 and the reports presented early this year. It's going up and up and up. And according to the SAPS, these identity fraud cases, they involve children, they involve our future leaders, they involve our future presidents. Imagine our future president will have their identities owned by someone else. What's going to happen to us? Our future bosses, obviously by that time they won't be our bosses, but just imagine that situation, like, okay, I'm working under this company, but I know someone somewhere else is owning everything about my leaders. That is not safe. If you follow the stories, I made this clear that this is from Newsroom for Africa so that you don't come and ask me questions. So if you follow the news, you will remember this story about the Stellenbosch students. This happened a few weeks ago, where they have discovered that their identity numbers, they have been used in SASA by someone else that they don't know to receive the services provided by SASA. Remember, these are students, and they're saying, I think they're at a third year level or so, or first year. So these children just from high school. And now, as they're starting their career path, their identity is owned by someone else. And what if SASA has been breached, but we don't know? So it means their identity is already not safe. And also, who is involved in this case? Maybe their identity was stolen somewhere else. Maybe they were stolen through NSFAS, maybe in a database from school, we don't know. And as they were doing this assessment, They've also collected 60 ID numbers from other students, and they discovered that that 60, 56 of them are already involved or misused related to SASSA services. If you also follow the news, this also happened a few weeks ago, where a teenager, it stated that she just turned 18. You know, after turning 18, you need to get your ID document. She just turned 18 in September, and the following month, when she was just trying to apply for the SASSA 350 grant, she discovered that her identity has been used. Someone has been receiving the 350 on her behalf just before she turned 18. How did that happen? And if you listen to these stories, you can feel the frustration from those people who have been affected, like what is going to happen to their lives, to their future. And also, with the same teenager, a bank account has been opened. Someone is, owning her identity, doing all those things for their benefits. Okay, I'm not going to talk much about this because it's a very sensitive issue, but I'm going to mention it that has to do with the former Miss SA contestant, because according to the DHA, the case, it's something happened long time ago, but they are discovering now that there's been fraud. So how many cases like this that have happened, but we haven't discovered them? What's going to happen once we discover them? It's not only these, there's more people have been affected by identity fraud. Not even just people, children, where you find that sometimes their parents, they open accounts without their consent. They do lots of debts without them knowing. So by the time they grow up, they need to own their identity. It becomes a problem. So these are just the comments that I got from the social media, just to say, some people, they witness, this happened to me, but I don't know what to do, so this is a big issue. So there are current methods that are used to verify children, but based on what is happening, like the rate at which identity fraud is happening, it shows that these current methods, they're actually not enough. There is something missing. So what is identity verification? It's actually a process to confirm that a person who's claiming to confirm that a person is who is claiming to be. For example, we as grown-ups, we have our identity cards where we present them wherever we need to prove that you are who we are claiming to be. Then they will check your face, they'll check your fingerprints and all that information. But for children, what are we checking? A birth certificate. Is a birth certificate linked to a child? I can just take your child and bring a birth certificate and say, yeah, this is my child, here's a birth certificate. We cannot prove that, okay, no, actually you are doing a wrong claim. Right. So let's just look at the history of identity verification. I'm sure most of us were not in this world when people were still identified by memory, using tattoos and all that. And then after that, government introduced like records, documents, fingerprints, like ink fingerprints, and then advanced biometrics was introduced, and it keeps on advancing. But I want us to look at the history of the way identity verification is happening, because I want us to understand what actually is happening when we have to identify the identity or verify identity of children. So back in the days, like in 1400s, it was not really necessary for a child to have a birth certificate. There actually was no birth certificate for a child. A child was just a child because they were not owning anything. So it was not a necessity for them to own any form of identity. But as the years continues, then the government introduced birth certificates. And then for us grown-ups, we started from memory, tattoos, documents, biometrics, now we're on our biometrics, digital identity, and the future where we have to own our identities as grown-ups. But what's going to happen to children? How are they going to own their identities? So this is just to show that the identity documents have been changing, and now we're moving to digital. If you read the news, you will see where the government wants to, or the plans from the government or Department of Home Affairs. And you also hear the plans about children, but I'm telling you, we are still verifying the identity of children using our birth certificates. So as I was saying, when you read, you see all these policies, documents, media saying this is how we are identifying children, but the reality is we are still identifying verifying the identity of children using only birth certificates. I spoke to my friend who gave birth a few months ago, and then I was just curious, like I'm seeing all these policies, about how we should use biometrics and birth certificates for children identification. And she said, no, it's still birth certificates. They didn't take any biometrics. So the problem of identity verification for children, it's still at present. And it's really affects children or the future of our children. Just to highlight a few challenges, obviously, the more technology is advancing, you cannot rely on one solution as technology is advancing. We also need to change. Relying on birth certificates, really, it doesn't make sense. And we know that with biometrics technologies, even with biometric technologies that we use as grown-ups, there are challenges there. But at least if we move for identifying these words are confusing. So for verifying the identity of children, if we make sure that it also moves with technology, what we do for grown-ups, we also do for children. We make sure that everything that we do for grown-ups, we also relate it to how we can improve the way we identify children or verify the identity of children. I think that will help. So what we have proposed at CSR, it's a project that started a few years ago. So we started doing research. On our first research, we're finding out which biometrics can we use for children and can work. Because there are lots of challenges. If you look at how tiny the finger of a child is, you can see the traditional biometrics systems or scanners, they cannot work. They actually don't work. So we also looking at governance side, like policy, and also people side to provide awareness on identity fraud for children. And also technology. I've highlighted technology because sometimes we tend to focus more on, let's come up with a solution without doing proper research, without looking at how the governance side of this problem, how can we solve this problem by governance side? And also, what can we do? How can we educate people, not just children, but parents, also service providers that has to do with identity for children. All right, so I'm not gonna go into details for what we've proposed because of the time, but research is very important. So I was looking at or reading at the news just to understand how this fraud, how criminals do this fraud. It's very important to understand how they do this stealing of identities for children so that we can fight against something that we understand. Because sometimes it's important to relate a solution to what it's possible to happen. So with the research, we look at, so we propose to collect and analyze child identity fraud activities. What has happened? How did this happen? How did they steal this? How did they get even access to those more than 60 identities to get into SASSA? So just to understand how did that happen, and so that at the end we come up with the solutions related to the current problems or current attacks that you are facing in child identity fraud. And also looking at the policies, we know our government, we respect that they're doing so much to try to solve these problems, but there is something that is missing. What is it that is missing? So in our study, we're also looking at that. What is it that is missing? What is it that can we do? We know if you can look at what, like the policies or the acts, it's already there, but why is it not being implemented even now? So we need to look at all those effects that blocks the implementation of such solutions. And also educating people, not only educating children, because how can you educate a 5-month-old child? You can't. But someone there is already targeting that identity, or maybe even someone from the family is already targeting the identity of a 5-month-old child. So if you educate the service providers who provide services related to children, for example, SASA, because it's one of the government organizations that provide services for children or for even old age people. So if you educate them, this is how identity fraud happens. This is what you should do. This is what you should implement. This is what you should be careful of so that it doesn't happen. That will also assist in us solving this problem. Technology. So there is a lot that you can do in technology. So what we have proposed, yes, using biometrics, but there is a problem with biometrics because what if it gets stolen? You know, we cannot trust where it is stored. For example, what if Department of Home Affairs gets stolen? Gets breached. What's going to happen to the data, to the identity information, to the biometrics of our children? So we propose ZKP. So ZKP is one of zero knowledge proofs. It's one of the methods that you can be able to store information and also use it to verify that you actually know a piece of this information without sharing the whole information. For example, if when you have to apply for NSFAS, for work, for going to university, you don't have to share all your IT numbers, all your everything, because you don't know as you are sending it or you are sharing it, is it safe? Or maybe that is where the identities for our children get stolen, when they apply for bursaries, when they apply for things. So with ZKP, they can be able to do all that without exposing their information. And also, we added an element of non-repudiation that uses digital signatures to make sure that whatever transaction or service that has to do with the child, there is someone who's responsible for that, and there must be an element to make sure that he can't deny that, yes, he did this service, or approved this service, or created an account for this particular child. But we know that there is quantum attacks that are possible. Maybe not, we haven't seen any, but according to our solution, we want to make sure that children identity is safe even for the future attacks. So we involved quantum safe public key infrastructure to work together with the digital signatures to make sure that the whole system is secure. Okay, so I have already spoke about this. So thank you so much for listening. So you can contact us on these details for more details, for collaborating to fight this problem of fraud identity in our country. I think we all need to assist the government to fight this crime. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, really bringing on this essential perspective on digital identity fraud. Really nice talk. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. So the gentleman said, why did we have to write our IDs on the piece of paper when coming in? Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Can I bring the mic to you?
Right, hi. Uh, all right, thanks for the presentation. I don't suspect that this is a unique problem in South Africa only, right? Are you able maybe to share just a little bit as to how other countries are actually solving this, if they are solving it? Because I mean, identity theft, even for children, should be, an issue across the globe. Yeah, if you can just share a bit
So
of
you're
that.
asking how other countries are solving this problem?
Yeah.
Okay, so even in other countries, they're still trying to solve this problem. They're also looking at biometrics. When you look at when you follow the articles and the media, they are also fighting the same problem. They have policies in place, but the problem is that you cannot solve this by policies in place only. You cannot solve this by technology only. So they're also looking at using biometrics, but it's still an ongoing problem that they're researching about. How can they solve it? Yes, technology is there, and they've been talking about using biometrics for children, but why is it not being implemented? Even in other countries, it's an ongoing research. Yes.
Thanks, Sthembile. It's an interesting topic. Quick one, when you were going through the slides, there was a slide where someone was complaining about their mother. So this is an insider threat, right? So let's look at it this way. My children, as long as they're below the age of consent, I actually own their identity. Because, just wait for it. Yes. I'm saying I own their identity in the sense that I'm the adult, I am their guardian, and I make decisions pertaining to that identity. If I go to the bank and if I invest money for them, the money is in their name, it's under their ID, but I can literally go back to the bank and say, give me back what? My money. So I literally have control over that identity, implying that if I do funny stuff with the identity, no one can actually question me for the period that I'm their guardian. So how do we curb that, considering it's now just an issue of ethics and not everyone is ethical?
Yes.
Yes, because it's not a crime for me to steal money that I've put into an account for my child, even though fundamentally it's theft. And I can also put them into negotiations or deals that my mind thinks is for their benefit, but I'm digging a pit or a hole for them.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. So that is why we're saying that, okay, there are policies or acts that allow us to own the identities, but the problem is now we cannot even trust the parents. Maybe you are a good parent. Some parents, they think for themselves. They make debts. You know, you will open an account on your child's name, but then later you feel so frustrated. You start opening loans, finishing all the money, open credit cards, finish all the money on your child's identity. Buy a car on your child's identity. They do that. So that is why we're saying there's something missing even on the governance side. So what is it that can we make sure that you can do good on a child's identity, but you can't do bad on a child's identity?
Thank you so much. Okay, guys. Okay, one more question. I think one more.
You can talk to me during lunchtime. We're going for lunch now.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, cool.
I'm not
Let's do that.
announcing, sorry.